Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Thanks, Bo. Thank you, NASCIO. Good morning, everybody. Thrilled to talk about this topic, and I'm so glad that digital government is on the radar this year for the state CIOs. One of my key roles as the Chief Digital Officer within the state is to have these conversations about a user-centered approach and how we can help leading every state agency towards a technology solution. Having said that, I'm pretty sure some of you have seen this. Has anybody not seen this? Oh, wow, not a single hand. Well, just a couple. So, all right, so for those who have not seen this, this is kind of like a quick comic strip of how a typical project starts with all the requirements and everyone who contributes towards that, and the end goal and how they are charged. Essentially just talking about, a mock process of how things change because of lack of communication, because of several things. But one of the things that evidently lacking in this, and that can result to pretty much any project going this way, is the inclusion of users. There is no user-centered process mentioned here, and clearly, if that's kept out of the loop, every project has the same destiny as mocked in this comic strip. So this is our user, and as Bo mentioned, it could be our citizen constituent, just anyone who interacts with your digital property, or somebody within your organization as an employee that interacts and uses the tools that you are developing. But let's focus on the end user, the citizen, and we know that there are several channels now that they use to interact with our organizations, that they use to seek our services, seek information. And right now, what I'm going to be talking about is the user-centered approach, the user-centered design process, and how that can be incorporated. So there are two key things for any user-centered design process. That process relies on a data-driven approach, where you can actually see some hard numbers, or an empirical research, where it's purely based on observation and purely based on certain conclusions that you derive by actually looking at someone using what you are designing, what you are developing. So a quick example of what a data-driven approach looks like, and this includes, basically, this talks about our website, georgia.gov. So I'm highlighting a monitor, desktop, pretty much, or a laptop, and a phone, because the website really should be available on both of these devices. But what I'm talking about is our website back in 2002. So clearly, this is pre-iPhone and pre-smartphones, so everything was designed for the desktop. But that's not the problem. The problem is that this website was designed, and the content was basically designed without the user in mind, because everything was very organizational. If you can see the navigation, that represented pretty much all the sectors of the agencies and how everything can be structured within that. So it was a very organizational approach. And what we saw was, we made an assumption in 2002 that everybody goes to georgia.gov, then georgia.gov sends them to the appropriate website. So let's take, if someone wants to register a new business within Georgia. To be able to register a new business, you need to go through 3 different agencies and 3 different websites. So in that case, when someone goes to georgia.gov, they go to the first agency. Then from there, if that agency really leads them, they go to the next agency. And then, if everything goes fine, they would find the third piece of their puzzle. In 2012, when we redesigned this website, obviously, we were better aware of how we need to be redesigning, and we took a very data-driven approach. So instead of sending a user across multiple agencies, we created that content that was scattered across 3 different websites and made it into one page. And we put that on Georgia.gov, and we started calling it a popular topics page, because we did look at what was the popular things that people were looking at, people were chasing. Also, we realized that not everyone comes to directly Georgia.gov. People go through search. Most of 70% of our traffic comes from Google and other searches. So now this is a better approach of either someone coming from the search to Georgia.gov or search directly to the popular topics page. And we made it very prominent, up and clear on Georgia.gov. We listed that up here. And now there's a page. So if someone is looking for business licenses, they're right there. What that helped us to do was also extend it. Of course, in 2012, when we designed this, there was no digital assistant, no Alexas, no Google Homes. But this lent us directly just to add a new channel because our content was really user-driven. It was focused on how the users approach. So it's a user-centered approach, and this is really kind of key to understand how our users come, where do they go, where do they stop. So I don't want to get in the details of this, but this is what we call as a customer journey map, where you kind of have stages and steps and some of these touch points. So if someone comes to a website or someone calls the call center, those are touch points that users interact with your organization, and then you gauge that, and accordingly, you can build your strategy. So just the way we started out with designing our website, we extended that to a conversational interface. But this approach applies to all channels. It's not confined to a certain channel. So let's quickly look at the mobile app. So something that we always get as a request is we need a mobile app. And that's when we really kind of like just take a pause, stare them in the eyes, and ask them, do you? I wish we could just do that, and they were like, just kidding. Let's build a responsive app. But no, we then take this approach as, let's figure out, why do you need one? And then we kind of go through a series of questions. Do you already have a web app that's serving what you're intending to build a mobile app for? If you do, then what is the reason for building it? Do you need a separate mobile experience for that? If you do, is it going to be using any of the mobile, the features, basically the cameras and the location devices that otherwise might not be as effective on a web app? And if everything is a yes, 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 then sure, build it. But do you have the resources for it? Do you have the resources to keep up with it, to maintain it? So accordingly, we would lead them to either a responsive web app or a hybrid app or a subscription-based app, which you can just kind of jump on, subscribe to, and use it for a selected period of time. Or then you invest in a pure native mobile app, which we did for our child support services. And that was the winner for last year's NASCIO award. And a quick note here is we did some rigorous testing for this app. And fine, the conversation can start ahead of time, but the testing is key to make sure the app is effective. And this is something we got real users, and we recorded what they were doing with the app, recorded, while we asked them questions while they were performing tasks. We also had their facial expressions recorded. Oh, there we go. So we could tell the frustration points, right? And then we compared all that data that we collected and all the observations, and then we basically made some recommendations to what needs to be fixed in an app, and they did, and it's an amazing app. And it truly passed all those questions and the need to be able to build that app. So all the subjects that we tested this on, we had some pure data for how long it took for certain tasks for all of them. Then we aggregated those, and we found out what the points were. So before we kind of landed on this success screen for everyone to kind of to get there in a certain desired time, we had to go through a very stringent user-centered process to get there. I'll be more than happy later to get a little more in detail for what we did with this app. I'll invite Karen from New York to take this further.